sealed.
Do you remember the 90s? A time of endless neon, every font pretending to be graffiti, and optimism that the economic outlook for the world was on the up and not circling the drain before we all end up in the Thunderdome. I won't fully don the rose-tinted specs and say better days, but there are some things that ring the nostalgia bell quite hard. Culturally, the 90s were, let's go with, mixed. Gen X was pushing back on what had come before, mainly Reagan, and the media it was creating reflected this. Lots of dystopian futures under the boot of an oppressive regime and plucky rad underdogs fighting back against the corrupt New World Order sorts of things. In my time as a person alive on this planet, nothing I have experienced has ever quite hit as many 90s notes along those Gen X lines as a 1994 light gun game by Midway titled Revolution X. It is the most 90s thing I have ever played, and while I did play it back in the 90s, it took until Space Year 2024 for me to really be able to reflect on just what a cultural time capsule, for better and worse, the game was. Let's take a quick look then, shall we? The game plays out as plenty of other shooting gallery types, Operation Wolf, Terminator 2, and so on and so forth. The screen scrolls, you move your reticule, you shoot enemies and try not to die. In arcades, it's fun because you get a big gun and booming sound and a large screen. At home, it's always pretty shonky because, well, it's not an experience that works as well at home. Regardless, games like this were definitely a popular thing in the 90s, following on from their birth in the 80s. So Revolution X takes that starting point and adds in Aerosmith. You know what? I'm just going to read the plot synopsis on Wikipedia because there is no need to rewrite this absolute gold. In a dystopian version of 1996, an alliance of corrupt government and corporate military forces have taken control of the world in the guise of the New Order Nation, Non. The Non, with their vampish commander Headmistress Helga, portrayed by Kerry Hoskins, have declared war on youth culture, anyone aged from 13 to 30, and have banned all forms of music, television, magazines, and video games. The player travels to Club X in Los Angeles to see Aerosmith perform live, but the band is captured by non-troops and hustled off the stage in the middle of their show. After escaping from the club, the player steals a helicopter and flies across the city to find the band's car. From here, the player must destroy 3 non-installations in the Middle East, Amazon jungle, and Pacific Rim, then travel to London to defeat Helga and her remaining forces at Wembley Stadium. Wow. Imagine all of this portrayed as an over-the-top shootyblaster video game, but not in a particularly self-aware fashion. On one hand, it knows what it is, and the tongue is firmly planted in its cheek, but on the other hand, you can't help but feel Revolution X sort of actually thinks it's cool. Yes, even with a baddie called Headmistress Helga, and even when featuring a band that was already a quarter of a century old when the game came out. Very fellow kids indeed. But the 90s-ness doesn't stop there. We've got the need for the player to collect CDs, which are then used as your special weapon, some kind of explosive disc flinger attached to your gun. Not good enough? Well, how about laser discs instead? Yes, collecting those was a more powerful disc flinger for you to batter the non-forces with in your journey to rescue Aerosmith from captivity. Those non-forces you're battling? Faceless goons, of course. But some of them are rollerblading. Let's just hold on that thought for a minute. Some of the enemies are rollerblading. So you've got your hey fellow kids Gen X-ers fighting the power against a tyrannical regime that's headed up by a sexy lady who wants to restrict your access to movies, music and video games. Your motivation is the need to rescue white-hot rock act Aerosmith and ignore any past transgressions of lead singer Steven Tyler. Really don't Google anything about him becoming a minor's legal guardian, it's really grotty and horrible. You shoot CDs and laser discs at things. Some enemies are rollerblading. And to round it all off, we've got a few more minor 90s touchstones. Digitized actors appearing in the game, including Steven Tyler and his merry band of weirdos. Full motion video to really take full advantage of said digitized actors. A rad sports car you get to unlock remotely because remotely unlocking cars was cool in the 90s. The rollerblades, which I know I've already mentioned, but they do deserve being mentioned again. Casual racism. Sexy bikini ladies locked in cages like seemingly most bikini-clad women were back then. And did I mention the rollerblades? Revolution X is relentlessly of its time, a game that is genuinely quite painful to engage with these days given just how utterly invested in the contemporary culture it is, and just how difficult it is to take most of it at anything other than face value despite desperate cries of "it was all a joke." The weirdest thing about it all though is that, well, Revolution X is actually pretty good fun. If you're playing the arcade original and not one of its many home ports at least. Just as so many other shooting gallery games over the years have been able to keep my attention for a surprising amount of time, Revolution X does just that. Is it smartly designed? Does it nail things thematically, thus drawing you further into the experience? Can you hone your technique and turn yourself into a super player through sheer force of will? No to all of those questions. But that intense 90sification paired with a solid core of shooting mechanics does make for something that can keep hold of your attention for a surprising amount of time. It's big, stupid, and absolutely not as self-aware as it pretends to be, but it does make an effort, and it is ridiculous enough that you can find yourself maybe laughing along with it at times. And these days it's a fantastic look back at just where we were in video games in the mid-90s. What gaming culture was heading towards, what the suits at the big publishers were keen to put their money behind. The PlayStation hadn't yet took flight and set gaming fully on its path towards being genuinely cool, so we were still seeing bizarre efforts like this thrust out to give the world of gaming some sort of character, some sort of culture. Swing and a miss it might have been, it's no less interesting as a result. Revolution X will not be at the forefront of many a player's mind, and with very good cause, but it's something that deserves to be remembered for what it did do and what it tried to be. And for the rollerblading enemies. Thanks for watching. You can support me on Patreon via the link below and join the hallowed ranks of this lot, none of whom would admit to being an Aerosmith fan in public. I reckon some of them are, though. Have to be, don't they? I'm off to watch 90s Aerosmith videos starring Liv Tyler and Alicia Silverstone and ignore the fact the former is the lead singer's daughter. Bye!